All right, everybody, what's going on? Welcome to another edition of Swag Talk, the show we cover the swag inside and out. Of course, I am your tour guide around the swag Wells coming at you, and we're going to continue our 12 team previews. We're going to take a stop off in the SIP and look at the JSU Tigers, Jackson State, the reigning, defending SWAC champs. We're going to talk about what they did last season and talk about what I think they're going to do this season. So buckle in and get ready and hit those socials, man, when you get opportunity. If you haven't liked or followed them, check those out. Instagram is Swag Talk, Twitter Swag Talk 76, Facebook is Swag Talk. If you haven't done so already, won't you please subscribe to the YouTube channel? Our channel is growing really rapidly. So I'd like to thank you guys for subscribing. If you haven't done so already, man, hit that button and subscribe, and then hit that notification bell to be alerted to any content that I upload, especially with the upcoming season. Probably going to work a couple of new things in there, so make sure you hit that notification bell to get that. Also got those Swag Talk tees, so you can hit me up if you want one. One for 25, two for 40. Really great shirts, man. They're real comfortable. They're real nice. So hit me up if you would like one. And man, let's not waste no more time, man. Let's talk JSU. Jackson State. They came off of a spring season where they were up and down. They didn't have their full team. Came in the spring and did work basically. Finished 11-2, 8-0 in conference, had a 6-0 home record. So they definitely were successful everywhere they played. They opened up their season with a 7-6 victory over Florida A&M in the Orange Blossom Classic. They beat Tennessee State by a score of 38-16. Then they would go on to drop a 12-7 decision to ULM in a game that me and a lot of people feel like they probably were the better team in that game. They just couldn't put the points on the board. They beat Delta State 24-17. They beat Alabama A&M 61-15 in a game that most people definitely won't forget. They beat Alabama State 28-7. They beat Bethune-Cookman 42-12. They beat Valley 28-19 in a close one. Valley is tough at home. And JSU was kind of prone to slow starts on offense, but their defense definitely kept teams intact, in check. They beat Texas Southern 41-21. They beat Southern 21-17 in a game that they had to score in the last two touchdowns in basically like the last 5 minutes to pull that one out. And then they beat Alcorn 24-10. They beat Prairie View 27-10 in the SWAC championship game. And then South Carolina State defeated them in the Celebration Bowl 31-10. Defense is the name of the game for this team. Defensively, this team was tremendous. You could not move the ball against this team, honestly. I mean, if you had any success moving the football against this team, then you were one of the lucky ones. They didn't give you much on either side of the ball. I mean, they didn't give you much in either phase of the offense, running or passing. And they definitely made things hard for you. They tremendous pressure on quarterbacks. They did a great job of turning you over. So let's look at some of these numbers. Scoring offense, they were fourth in the league with 27.5 points per game. They scored 50 touchdowns on the league, which was the second most. 4 field goals, 46 extra points, giving them 358 total points. Defensively, they allowed an average of 14 points per game. Defense, you could not score. They allowed 21 touchdowns, which was the fewest by 6 in the league. 16 field goals, 17 extra points, 1 2-point conversion. Opponent scored 193 points in the season. Total offense, Jackson State was 7th in the league at 337 yards per game. Obviously, that number is weighted down by their run offense. They didn't really run the ball very well last year. 5.8 yards per play, which basically is pretty much in the middle of every team in the conference. Defensively, they were first in total defense, 257 yards per game, 3.9 yards per play. That was the fewest by almost a full yard. They just did not allow you to do much. Rushing offense, JSU was last in the league at 89.1 yards per game. They did score 14 touchdowns on the ground, so even though they did not have a lot of success running the ball, they still managed to score some touchdowns, and they actually had the 7th most attempts. So they did try to run the football, and that's what makes the number really stand out more is that they ran the ball they ran the ball almost 400 times, which only 5 teams did in the season. So they had a lot of attempts, but they just could not find much success. Um, Rushing defense, they were second in the league at 100 yards per game. They only allowed 7 touchdowns. They allowed 2.8 yards per carry, which obviously was the least in the league. Um, Passing offense, they were second in the league, 248.5 yards per game, 30 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, completing 65% of their passes, which led the league in completion percentage. Defense, they led the league in passing defense with 157 yards per game. Opponents completed 48% of their passes, which was the least, the lowest percentage in the conference. Uh, 14 touchdowns allowed and 13 interceptions. So defensively, they definitely would, like I said, they just were a stout defense all around. Kickoffs, they led the league with kickoff returns. They led the league with an average of 24.3 yards per return and 2 touchdowns. Punt returns, they were second, 14.2 yards per return and 1 touchdown. And basically, like I said, when you have a defense like theirs and you have a special team that's gonna get the offense extra yardage, you're gonna start your possessions in so much better field position than your opponent, because your defense is not allowing them to move the ball, and your offense is pretty consistently moving the ball and scoring. So you have shorter fields to work with throughout the game, while your opponent has to try to drive the ball against a defense that's not allowing any yardage, and that's a recipe for success. And that's definitely a great recipe for a young offense, a team that's still learning how to play together, a team with a young quarterback, having a defense that you trust that can get the ball back for you when you make a mistake, is definitely a key. Uh, Kickoffs, they were second in the league with a 40 yard net average. They had 32 touchbacks. They averaged 61.7 yards per kick. Field goals, they were last in the league at 4 of 12 for 33%. They struggled with the kicking game as far as field goals go. And extra points, they were 46 to 49 for 93%. That was seventh in the league. So that's something that they're definitely working to shore up. Punting, they were ninth in the league at an average of 35.3 yards per return, net 32.1. They only allowed opponents to average 2.1 yards per return, which was the second lowest. So you weren't gonna get any extra yardage on your punt returns, which means your offense probably, like I said, was gonna start in pretty poor field position. Offensively, they allowed 36 sacks on the season, which was the most in the league, and that was last place. Defensively, they led the league with 54 sacks on the season. So offense really struggled to protect the quarterback. Defense, 8 quarterbacks up. They were tied for first with 13 interceptions on the season, and they had 1 touchdown. Conversions, first downs, they were actually seventh in the league at 18.3 first downs per game. Defensively, they were second, allowing 15.5 first downs per game. Third down conversions, they were sixth in the league at 38.1%, 64-168. And to me, that's kind of like a byproduct of an offense that struggles to run the football, and that's young and really still figuring out how to play together. So they had some drives, especially early in the season, that they couldn't really complete. But defensively, they only allowed opponents to convert 26% of their third down. So they were going to get the ball back one way or the other. So it honestly was a situation where you get enough chances, you're going to score enough points to win. Because your opponent is not going to do much. So opponent was 54 of 202 on the season for 28%, 26%. Fourth down conversions, Jackson State was last at 21%, 3 of 14. They actually attempted this one of the lowest amount of fourth downs on the season. They were 12th. They were ninth in attempts. Only a couple of teams had less, so they didn't really go for it a lot on fourth down. All opposing offenses were 46% on fourth downs, 13 or 28. Again, you're not really going to have a lot of success moving the ball in that defense. Penalties, they were 11th in the league at 73.2 yards per game. They were penalized the most in the league at 111 penalties on the season for 951 yards. The Opponents were penalized 86 times, which would be the fourth most in the league for an average of 51.9 yards per game, 675 yards of penalties for the opponents. Red zone offense, Jackson State was sixth in the league. They had 71% conversion rate in the red zone, 30 of 42. They scored 27 touchdowns. They had 18 passing touchdowns, 9 rushing touchdowns. They were 3 of 8 on field goals in the red zone. They had 2 fumbles, 2 interceptions, and 3 turnovers on downs. So basically, they had 7 turnovers in the red zone. Red zone defense, the opponents completed 85% of their scores in the red zone. They were 23 of 27, 12 touchdowns, 5 rushing, 7 passing, 11 of 11 on field goals. And opponents only turned the ball over 4 times, and those were on down. So that was, if you could get in the red zone, you could find some success against Jackson State, but you had to get there first and foremost, and that was hard to do. So they bailed themselves out quite a bit. Looking at the individual stats for the season, their leading rusher on the season was Peyton Pickett. He ran the ball 107 times for 450 yards. He averaged 4.2 yards per carry and 5 touchdowns. Santee Marshall, 106 carries, 449 yards, 4.2 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns. J.D. Martin, 54 carries, 227 yards, also 4.2 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns. So those were the guys who basically toted the load for them. Passing, Shedeur Sanders, 272 of 413, 30 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 65% completion rate, 3,231 yards. Tremendous season, obviously racked up a ton of awards and, really proved a lot of people, wrong. I had my doubts, and, he had a very great season. He had a few mistakes here and there, and working with the line that he had, it's amazing that he was able to put up those kind of numbers, because obviously your line is suspect, and you're getting pressured all game. You expect especially a younger guy to make those mistakes, but he was able to pick up some yardage with his legs and scrambling. He was able to get the ball to where it needs to go, and he was obviously at 65% completion rate. He was pretty accurate. So that's a recipe for success. That's what you want, especially as a young guy. You got a lot to build on as you move forward. Keith Corbin was the leading receiver with 69 receptions, 921 yards, 13.3 yards per catch, 7 touchdowns. Malachi Wideman came on, 34 catches, 540 yards, 15.8 yards per catch, 12 touchdowns. Trevante Rucker, 26 catches, 515 yards, 19.8 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns. Warren Newman, 48 catches, 346 yards, 7.2 yards per catch, and 2 touchdowns. Josh Lanier, 37 catches, 318 yards, 8.5 yards per catch, 4 touchdowns. Shane Hook, 16 catches, 199 yards, 12.4 yards per catch, 2 touchdowns. Kylan Ritchie, 11 catches, 138 yards, 12.5 yards per catch. And Peyton Pickett, 14 catches, 132 yards, 9.4 yards per catch. So obviously they have a ton of guys that they can throw the ball to, and they have even more this season. So the ball will be spread around quite a bit. So we'll see how that turns out this season. Aubrey Miller was the leading tackler with 109 tackles on the season. Keontae Hampton second with 79. James Houston with 70. Antoine Owens with 65. Cameron Silverman Craig 48 tackles for loss. James Houston 24.5. Owens 18.5. Hampton 13.5. Miller 11.5. Sacks. Houston 16.5. Miller 6.5. Owens 6. Reagan 5. Hampton 4. Niles Gaddy 4. Special teams, Lane McGregor was leading punter with 32 punts for 1,112 yards. Long was 47, 34.7 average. Bailey Rayborn was 2 of 6 on field goals for 33%. His long on the season was 41. He was 1 of 3 from 30 to 39 yards and 1 of 3 from 40 to 49 yards. Glenn Messiah was also 2 of 6 for 33%. 1 of 3 from 20 to 29 yards and 1 of 3 from 40 to 49 yards. His long was 40. So they only made 4 field goals on the season. That's something that they definitely gonna have to improve on. Bailey Rayborn was a very good kickoff guy for them. 67 kicks, 4,137 yards, 61.7 yard average, and 32 touchbacks, which actually led the league. So you weren't getting many returns when he kicked it off. Warren Newman was the leading punt returner, 27 returns, 443 yards, and 1 touchdown, 16.4 yards per return. Isaiah Bolden, All-American, All-SWAC return guy, 16 returns, 591 yards, 36-yard average, 2 touchdowns. He's a threat to take it to the house anytime that he touches it. So that's basically where we stand with JSU after the 2021 season. They took some big losses now. Don't they're gonna have to replace a lot of production in a couple areas, but they brought in obviously a lot of guys that are gonna be capable of taking the reins for them. But because obviously JSU is a team that kind of lives in the portal. They're recruiting high school guys as well, but they definitely want to get those grad guys and some of those guys out of the portal with extra years to kind of flourish out their roster. So they're gonna take some big losses. They're gonna have some holes to fill. And we'll talk about those now. As we look at the 2022 season, we're gonna start with the schedule. And I apologize, I didn't put together my little slides. So y'all got to bear with me on this one. They open up their season on September 4th against FAMU in the Orange Blossom Classic. They play Tennessee State on September 10th in the Southern Heritage Classic. Grambling is September 17th at home, WC Gordon Classic. So the first 3 games are very big games. Obviously, that FAMU game is a game that's probably going to decide the East. I mean, it basically ultimately did last season. The loser is going to need the winner to lose twice in conference, and I don't really see either one of these teams losing 2 conference games. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I'm saying, sitting here on paper, I don't really see neither team losing 2 conference games at this point. But stranger things have happened. So this can be the default SWAC East championship game like it was last season. The Tennessee State game is going to be interesting. Tennessee State improved as the season went on last year, and they got some great transfers. They got a really good quarterback coming in. They have a great running back there, and they hit the portal hard as well. So this game can be a lot closer than last season. I think JSU still has, the edge in a couple key positions. So I think, they'll be okay in that game. Grambling is a game that intrigues me simply because at this point, we don't really know where Grambling is going to be. Their first 2 games against Arkansas State and Northwestern State are kind of going to tell the tale, but they may not fully. Grambling has historically had a lot of success in Jackson. So that's something that you can kind of look at, but you can't put a lot of stock in that right now. But being that this is the 3rd game of the season, I think this favors JSU a lot. If this game was later in the season and Grambling had a chance to kind of figure out who they are, I would say Grambling had a better chance of winning. I think JSU wins this game because I think they're at that point in the season. I think they're just a better team at that point in the season. September 24th, they host Valley. I keep saying Valley at home and Valley on the road has been 2 different teams. Last year they did win a road game, which definitely goes a long way. It's starting to change that narrative that I always like to put out. I don't think nobody else pushes that narrative but me, but I've been pushing it for a long time, and I'm going to continue until Valley starts to have more success on the road. But, they get up for Jackson State. It's a rivalry game. The series is not close, but Valley takes this game very serious, so they will come out and play hard, but I think JSU can weather that storm. October 8th, after a bye week, they go to Alabama State to take on the Hornets. Alabama State's homecoming. This can be a proverbial hornet's nest, pun fully intended. Alabama State, again, is the kind of team that we don't really know where they're going to be. They have new coaching staff. They're getting some new guys. they have a lot of turnover on offense, especially. So we don't really know exactly where they're going to be, but this game can be I don't. This game can be a game that can be tough for JSU on the road. That I think it's going to be a great crowd. It's going to be a hostile environment, and one of the few true road games that they have this season. So this can be an interesting game. I mean, Alabama State's tough at home, and they may be able to put up a good fight in this one. You never know. I still lean to JSU because to me, the champs are the champs, and I think this team is they have enough coming back from the last team that they understand what it takes to win. The coaching staff obviously is primed and ready, no pun intended, to prove that they can win anywhere, and they want to. This team wants to dominate this year. So, if you want to do that, then these are the kind of games you have to go out and win. And pretty handily. The last time they played a team for their homecoming, you saw how that turned out. So, Hornets, be careful. October 15th, they play Bethune-Cookman in Jacksonville. Bethune-Cookman, I think, is going to be much improved this season. But I think I think the gap is still big enough between the two teams that JSU, will be an easy favorite in this game. So I favor them heavily in this game. The game that intrigues me the most this season is their homecoming game on October 22nd against Campbell. Campbell is recruiting like crazy. In that aspect, they're not bringing in the 5-star, 4-star guys, but they're bringing in a gang of 3-star guys and portal guys, and they're building up that team, and they're moving they're moving to the Colonial this season, and next season, excuse me, and so they're on a high rise. But this team has not had the on the field success. I think their best season since they started playing football was like 6-5. They won 3 games last year, so we don't fully know what this team is. Again, this is another team that can be very good or they can be whatever. Because we don't really know, and nobody really knows a lot about Campbell at this portion of the season. By this time this game comes around, we'll know basically who they are. So with that being said, it's a non-conference game. I go SWAC in these kind of games if the situation is right, and I think JSU can win this game, obviously. But you have to look at Campbell as a wild card right now. We don't really know who they are or what they are. As a team, if they are improving from that 3-8 team, or are they just a team that's bringing in a bunch of guys this year and they may not come together. So that's the game that probably intrigues me the most because that team is an unknown at this time. October 29th is the Boombox Classic. They host Southern on that game. Last year's game was a barn burner. It was another JSU Southern Classic game. Hurt my heart at the end, but that's Southern Jackson when they come together. Again, Southern filling in a lot of holes on this team. They're picked to win the West. This could be a preview of the SWAC championship game. If Southern is playing well right now, because of the situation that Southern has more holes to fill, and we don't know where they're at. Obviously, you favor JSU in this game at this point. Texas Southern is the next opponent on November 15th. On November 5th in Houston. Very intriguing game. TSU played really well against Jackson State. They just really couldn't keep up scoring wise. They were one of the few teams that ran the ball well against Jackson State in that game. And a lot of people feel this season Texas Southern can be a West Division contender. So this is a huge game for them. They may be able to ambush Jackson State if Jackson State has a tough game against Southern. That game is going to be physical. It's going to be hard hitting, and it's going to be intense now. The margin is what it is. It depending on that, but this is I don't want to say I'm hesitant to call it a trap game, but it kind of is a trap game because you have the Alabama A&M game coming up the next week, and that's people are trying to build that game up, Manor and Prime, and the Scooter and all that kind of stuff. So it's gonna that game is gonna have some residual effect for the next couple of years, and so this is kind of a trap game because you're going on the road. This is again one of the few true road games that you have, and it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate this game. But right now, obviously, you go JSU at that point. Like I said, the Alabama A&M game is next in Mobile. That's the Gulf Coast challenge. Um, Jackson State is more stable. Bama A&M, they're bringing in a ton of guys on defense out of the portal. They're going to have a new starting quarterback, but they still have weapons on offense. Last season, the offensive line, just could not stop JSU. JSU had 10 sacks in that game, and they just wreaked havoc all night. So it's going to be important that Alabama A&M offensive line protect whoever is at quarterback in this game, because JSU loves to bring pressure. So this is it's an interesting game. We don't know what A&M is going to be at this point, but Jackson State, could be cruising. So this could be a game where it may be closer than it appears, or one of those slow starts. That's something I think JSU is definitely going to have to work on this season, is cutting out the slow starts and just getting the foot on the throttle as early as you can. They close out their regular season with Alcorn on November 19th in Lorman. That's going to be a sellout, and that game is going to be packed, and that's going to probably be the biggest intense road atmosphere that they play in this season, probably other than Alabama State. So they'll be battle tested by this time. Alcorn can be anywhere in the West Division because, like I said, the West Division is so wide open. This could be a preview of the SWAC championship game as well. So, but this is a big game. Alcorn, they hung around with JSU last year, just couldn't get over the hump. The Braves are tough at home, so it's gonna be a tough, hostile place, and it's definitely a game that I'm really gonna be eager to watch. Then obviously on their schedule, they have the SWAC championship game. On my schedule, I have them in the SWAC championship game, so that goes on. And then the Celebration Bowl is probably where they're ultimately going to end up, because I think this team is going to win the conference. Schedule wise, with no FBS game and a couple FCS teams that are gonna probably be better than they were last year, and a non-conference game against Grambling. This is a very manageable schedule for a team like this. This this is something. This is a team this season. If you look at it, that schedule, you can if things fell right, this is an 11-0 schedule, because that's no disrespect to anybody, but on paper at this point where we're sitting now, they're better than almost every team on their schedule. So I'm not saying they're going to go undefeated, because I think it takes a tremendous amount of luck, injury luck, success, all kind of stuff to finish undefeated. There's been a lot of great teams that dropped the game, here or there during a season, because the season is a grind, and especially in conference play, you just never know how things are going to shake out. So I at work, for this team at worst, I think they lose 2 games. Where those 2 games are, FAMU and maybe somebody else, don't really know who that other team could be. I'm gonna say 10-1, because I just don't like to pick teams to go undefeated, because to me it takes so much to do that. And you're always prone for a game, especially on the road somewhere. Things may not go your way. Those flags may fly that don't normally fly against you. You may turn the ball over, more than normal. So, barring one of those kind of games, then this team is going to repeat as champs, in my opinion. Where they finish at that point is up in the air. But I think this team loses no more than 2 games at worst, which I don't really see. So I'm saying 10-1, SWAC championship, and hopefully a Celebration Bowl victory this time. Basically, obviously the guys coming in. You have a guy like Travis Hunter, who is an amazing athlete. Defense, offense, I've watched him play a bunch of times. He's a guy on defense. That ball is his, and he's looking to score when he touches it. Offense, he's looking to make a big play anytime he touches the ball. But don't sleep on a guy like Kevin Coleman. He's a kid that's gonna definitely make some big plays. He was a highly touted guy coming out of high school. They return Malachi Wideman. They have Shane Hooks. They have Mark Pope coming from Miami. They are loaded at receiver. Dallas Daniels is another Western Illinois transfer guy. They have tons of guys at receivers. Quadarius Davis is another guy to look out for. whatever you want. I mean, Trevante Rucker got lost in the shuffle to me last season. I don't know if he got banged up or if they, if when Wyman came on, he kind of fell behind. But that's a guy that you definitely don't want to sleep on because he's a deep threat. Um, they just have tons of guys that's going to catch the ball. And this season, I think they can have a much better rushing attack. Um, they they have a big transfer coming in from Delaware State at running back. The offensive line is going to have to be better. Of course, they addressed that, bringing in some guys, but that unit is going to have to gel and play well. They have to protect better, and having a really good running back is going to help the running game. But the line has to also open up those holes, and I think JSU is going to have to commit to the running game. Not I don't think they need to run the ball a whole lot, but because they ran the ball almost 400 times last season. So if they have a similar rushing attempt number, and they increase their yardage per game, then this offense is going to be very tough to defeat, because you're going to have to defend the pass with all those receivers and a quarterback that's not going to really make a lot of mistakes, and then a running game that can get that yardage for you, especially those short down and distances that they had some problems with last year. That can be the difference in this team. That can make this offense better than last year's offense. Is that guy, an all-conference type of guy that can tote the ball for you and be your workhorse guy. So I like this offense, I think maybe more than last season because of that. Like I said, they have umpteen guys that can catch the ball. Defensively, obviously they're going to have to replace some big dogs on defense. You're going to have to replace obviously James Houston, Antoine Owens, Keontae Hampton. Those are guys who had put up tremendous numbers last season, and those are like your top 3 guys in tackles for loss and close to your top 3 or 4 guys in sacks. So that's a lot of production to replace, but they hit the portal obviously very hard. So they're gonna bring in, a lot of guys to fill those spots. We'll see, where they go. Who steps in and takes charge. But this is gonna be, obviously this is gonna be a team that's gonna be tough to defeat. You're gonna have to face a team that's gonna be really good in the return game, especially on kickoffs. Replacing Warren Newman is gonna be an important thing. Maybe Bolden gets to do that too because he can return punts as well. So if you have a guy that can be, house it on punt returns and kick returns, then you're sitting in great shape. There's not a lot on paper as far as holes go for this team. They will be great. I don't know how dominant they will be, but this team is going to be tough to defeat. I don't know if this defense will be as great as last year's defense. I personally feel like this defense is going to take a slight step back, not enough to throw this team off, but I don't, unless somebody steps up and really, gets that pass rush position taken over and puts up those kind of numbers, then they'll be a slightly less efficient defense, but not enough to be noticeable. I think they're gonna try to get it done with multiple guys that can rush the passer. So they're gonna probably throw waves of guys at you, and whoever gets you gets you. So you're gonna have to catch up to JSU. They're still distancing themselves. I think the rest of the SWAC is trying to keep pace, but until somebody can really even it up, then this team is probably going to win the conference. That's why I feel like that FAMU game is very important for both teams, because I think FAMU is the number 2 team behind them, and they're probably the team that's closest to them in terms of talent on paper. So, like I said, this is going to be another successful season for JSU, probably another SWAC championship, and if they make it, hopefully a Celebration Bowl victory. So, what can I say? Success for JSU this season. So, catch me next week on Wednesday. We will preview Valley, and then Thursday is SWAC Smoke live at 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern, and then Sunday we preview Prairie View, who is an enigma. Nobody knows what the Panthers are doing this season. So tune in to those shows and anything that drops in between. So I'm your tour guide, C. Wells. I'm going to stop the bus and y'all can hop out, and we'll catch you guys on the next show. Peace.